Sarah Martinez was rushing through the cramped airplane aisle with a medical kit when the man in seat 3A grabbed her wrist. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead as he whispered, "Please, my daughter." She had no idea that saving this stranger's life would lead to a phone call 6 months later that would transform everything for her own 8-year-old daughter lying in a hospital bed, fighting for her life. Before we continue, if you enjoy incredible true stories of how one act of kindness can change everything, make sure to click that subscribe button. This is the best way for you to support our work. Thank you very much, and let's continue. It was a Tuesday morning in March when Sarah boarded Flight 447 from Denver to Chicago. She had been working double shifts as a nurse for 3 weeks straight, desperately trying to save enough money for her daughter Emma's upcoming surgery. The medical bills were mounting, and despite her insurance, the specialized procedure Emma needed would cost nearly $40,000 out of pocket. Sarah's exhaustion was bone deep, but she couldn't afford to stop working. She settled into her middle seat in row 23, wedged between a businessman typing aggressively on his laptop and an elderly woman knitting what appeared to be the world's longest scarf. Sarah closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment of peace before the flight took off. Emma's face flashed in her mind. Her bright smile despite the pain she'd been enduring for months, her brave attempts to comfort her mother when Sarah thought she wasn't looking. The doctors explained that without surgery, her condition would progressively worsen. Sarah had watched her vibrant, energetic daughter slowly become more tired, more fragile. The child who once spent hours on the playground now needed to rest after climbing a single flight of stairs. 20 minutes into the flight, Sarah was reviewing Emma's medical records on her phone when she heard a commotion from the front of the plane. A flight attendant's voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a medical emergency. If there are any medical professionals on board, please identify yourselves immediately." The flight attendant, a young woman named Jessica, looked relieved when Sarah identified herself as a registered nurse. What struck her most were his eyes, a piercing blue that reminded her of Emma's, filled with the same kind of fear she'd seen in her daughter's face during hospital visits. His pulse was rapid and irregular, his skin was clammy, and he was showing classic signs of cardiac distress. She asked Jessica to bring the aircraft's medical kit while she continued to monitor his vital signs. Sarah asked, partly to keep him talking and partly to establish a connection that might help calm him. "But right now, I need you to focus on your breathing. Slow, deep breaths." Every few minutes, she would take his pulse and note the irregular rhythm that concerned her most. "Well, my father had a heart attack at 55, but I've always been healthy. I run marathons, for God's sake. We develop surgical equipment. Ironic, isn't it? All this medical technology at my fingertips, and here I am at 30,000 feet, completely helpless." She learned that he was a widower, that his daughter Jennifer was his entire world, and that he was flying to Chicago for her college graduation. She told him about Emma, about the surgery she needed, about the challenges of being a single parent. "You're an angel," David said as his condition stabilized. "Jennifer is studying to be a doctor. She wants to help children like your Emma. Please," he said urgently, "I need your contact information. I want to thank you properly. You saved my life." But something about David's intensity convinced her to write her phone number on a piece of paper. She had helped save a life, but she was still returning home to her own daughter's uncertain future. Sarah worked every available shift, took on extra responsibilities, and even started a small GoFundMe campaign, but the money was coming in too slowly. She would draw pictures of hearts, anatomically correct ones she'd learned about from her doctor visits, and leave them around the house with notes like, "Mommy, my heart is broken, but my love for you isn't, and when I'm better, we'll go on all the adventures we planned." The voice was familiar, though stronger than when she'd last heard it. "David, how are you feeling? I hope you recovered well. She was inspired by our conversation about your daughter. It's gotten worse. She needs surgery next month, but the costs..." She stopped, not wanting to burden this man who had already been through so much. "You gave me the chance to see my daughter graduate, to see her start her career, to see her become the amazing woman she is. I can't repay that debt, but I'd like to try. My company, Chen Medical Technologies, we specialize in pediatric cardiac equipment. I've spoken with the best pediatric cardiologists in the country about Emma's condition. With your permission, I'd like to arrange for her to be seen by Dr. Amanda Rodriguez at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia." She's pioneered a new minimally invasive technique that would be perfect for Emma's case. But more than that, Sarah, I want to help, because what you did on that plane, you didn't just save my life. You reminded me what truly matters. I know about the GoFundMe campaign and how you've been selling your belongings to pay for Emma's medical expenses. What you did for me wasn't just the act of a skilled nurse. It was the act of someone with extraordinary compassion. The world needs more people like you, Emma asked as they walked through the airport. She spent over an hour explaining Emma's condition and the surgical procedure in terms both Sarah and Emma could understand. The minimally invasive technique she had developed would require only small incisions and would have Emma back to normal activities within weeks rather than months. Emma, Dr. Rodriguez said, kneeling down to the little girl's level. After this surgery, you'll be able to run and play and do all the things other kids do. How does that sound? I brought you something, Jennifer said, handing Emma a package wrapped in bright paper. This is so you can listen to your heart after the surgery and hear how strong it is, Jennifer explained. And maybe someday, if you want to be a doctor like me, you'll already have your first medical instrument. I want to be a doctor who helps kids like me, by showing me that even in our darkest moments there are angels walking among us. Rodriguez examined her carefully, running additional tests to ensure it was safe to proceed. Rodriguez had to make adjustments to her surgical approach. Jennifer shared stories from medical school, explaining each step of the procedure to help Sarah understand what was happening. The surgery was more complex than we anticipated, but it was a complete success. Emma's heart is now functioning perfectly. The additional scar tissue we found actually explains why her symptoms were progressing so quickly. We were able to remove it all, and she's going to live a completely normal, healthy life. She'll actually be stronger than most children her age. She experienced some pain and discomfort, and there were moments when she felt discouraged. It's your heart learning to work the way it was always meant to work. The color returned to her cheeks, and her infectious laugh filled the hospital room. She made friends with the nurses, drew pictures for the other young patients, and asked Dr. Rodriguez dozens of questions about hearts and surgery. She also started a small support group for the other children on the cardiac ward, sharing her drawings and encouraging them with stories about what she planned to do when she was better. The nurses called her their little ambassador of hope. Rodriguez told Sarah one afternoon, "I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've never seen a child with such resilience and positivity. She's going to do great things." Parents would stop by to hear her story, to gain hope from seeing this vibrant child who had been so sick just days before. Emma would show them her surgical scar with pride, calling it her warrior mark. Maria Santos had traveled from Mexico with her 5-year-old son Carlos, who needed the same surgery Emma had received. Maria spoke limited English and was overwhelmed by the hospital system and the costs involved. Sarah spent hours with Maria, translating when needed and helping her navigate the insurance paperwork. When she learned that the family couldn't afford the procedure, Sarah immediately called David. "David, there's a little boy here who needs the same surgery Emma had, but his family can't afford it. I know your foundation." Dr. Rodriguez agreed to perform the procedure, and Emma insisted on being Carlos's surgery buddy, sharing her stethoscope and drawing him pictures of strong hearts. "Soon you'll have one too, and we'll both be super fuerte." Carlos's surgery was successful, and Emma was there when he woke up, holding his hand and showing him her own scar. "See? We're both warriors now," she told him. Maria taught Emma basic Spanish words, while Sarah helped Maria learn English phrases. When both children were discharged, they promised to stay in touch. "I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've never seen a child with such resilience and positivity. She's going to do great things. But I also want you to know that what you did for the Santos family, that's exactly the kind of compassion that started this whole journey. The foundation needs someone who understands what families go through," David explained. "Someone who's been in their shoes, someone with your compassion and your nursing background. We want to help more families like yours, like the Santos family, and we need you to lead that effort. Now we want to give you the resources to do it on a larger scale." "Mommy, I want to write letters to all the kids on the cardiac ward," she said. "I want them to know that surgery isn't scary and that they're going to be okay." When they arrived home, their small apartment felt different somehow. Emma ran from room to room, marveling at how she could climb the stairs without getting winded. She insisted on walking to the neighborhood park, something she hadn't been able to do in months. At the park, Emma met her friend Jessica, who had been worried about her during the surgery. "Emma, you're back! Are you really better?" Sarah watched her daughter play with a mixture of joy and amazement. This was the child she had almost lost, now full of life and energy, inspiring everyone around her. That evening, as Sarah was putting Emma to bed, her daughter made an announcement that would shape the next chapter of their story. "Rodriguez, but I also want to help families like Mr. David helped us. I want to make sure no kid has to be scared about getting better." Her energy was boundless, her grades had improved dramatically, and she had started something that surprised everyone, a pen pal program for children with heart condition. With Sarah's help, she created colorful postcards featuring hand-drawn hearts and encouraging messages. But when other hospitals heard about Emma's project, they began requesting postcards for their young patients too. Within months, Emma was writing to children across the country, sharing her story and offering hope to families facing the same fears she and Sarah had experienced. Her bedroom became a small post office, with stacks of letters waiting to be answered and care packages being prepared for children about to undergo surgery. Her first major project was creating a comprehensive support system for families facing pediatric cardiac procedures. This included not just financial assistance, but emotional support, educational resources, and practical help navigating the medical system. The first family she helped through the program was the Johnsons from rural Kentucky. Their 6-year-old daughter Madison needed surgery similar to Emma's, but they lived 400 miles from the nearest qualified pediatric cardiac center. Sarah arranged for the foundation to cover not just the medical costs, but also transportation, lodging, and lost wages for the parents who would need to take time off work. She personally met with each family, sharing her own experience and connecting them with other families who had been through similar situations. She understood that fear and uncertainty could be as overwhelming as financial stress. "When I first met Sarah," said Tom Johnson, Madison's father, "I thought she was just another hospital administrator. But when she started talking about her daughter Emma, when she showed me the pictures and told me their story, I knew she really understood what we were going through." The second family Sarah helped presented a more complex challenge. The Garcias from Arizona had twin boys, both born with the same heart condition as Emma. The medical costs would be astronomical, and the emotional toll of having both children need surgery was overwhelming for the parents. Sarah worked with Dr. Rodriguez and the hospital to schedule both surgeries within the same week, allowing the family to minimize time away from home and work. The foundation covered all expenses, and Sarah arranged for volunteers to provide additional support during the children's recovery. Emma took a special interest in the Garcia twins, creating a care package filled with games, books, and her famous heart drawings. She also recorded a video message for them, sharing her story and encouraging them to be brave. "Hi Miguel and Diego," Emma said in the video, wearing her soccer uniform and holding her stethoscope. "I know you're probably scared about your surgery, but I want you to know that it's going to be the best thing that ever happens to you. After my surgery, I could run and play and do everything I dreamed of. Soon, you'll be able to do all those things too. You're going to be superheroes with fixed hearts." The video series, called Hearts of Hope, became a cornerstone of the Foundation's support services. Emma interviewed other young cardiac patients, sharing their stories and creating a library of encouragement for families facing similar challenges. The videos were translated into multiple languages and were being used by hospitals around the world. Jennifer, now in her second year of medical school, tutored Emma in science and math, encouraging her dream of becoming a doctor. His company had been working on a new pediatric cardiac device, inspired by Emma's case and the complexities Dr. Rodriguez had encountered during her surgery. "The device we've developed," David explained to Sarah and Emma over dinner, "will make surgeries like yours even safer and more effective. But more importantly, it will make these procedures accessible to hospitals that don't currently have the specialized equipment needed for pediatric cardiac surgery. Kids in smaller cities, in rural areas, in developing countries, they'll all have access to the same quality of care that saved your life. The Emma Martinez Pediatric Cardiac Stabilizer. Would that be okay? David get sick right when you were there? Mommy, I want to start a club at school for kids who want to help other kids. We could raise money for the foundation, but we could also write letters and make care packages and visit kids in the hospital. What would you call this club?" But word spread quickly, and within a month, they had 25 members. The children organized bake sales, car washes, and talent shows to raise money for the foundation. They created care packages for hospitalized children and wrote encouraging letters to young patients around the country. The local newspaper wrote a feature story about the Heart Heroes, which was picked up by national media. Soon, children from other schools were asking how they could start their own Heart Heroes chapters. Emma smiled and closed her eyes, her small hand resting on her chest, where her strong, healthy heart beat steadily. Sarah helped Emma create a handbook for starting Heart Heroes chapters, complete with fundraising ideas, volunteer opportunities, and ways for children to support their peers facing medical challenges. Within 6 months, there were Heart Heroes chapters in 12 states, with hundreds of children participating in activities to help sick kids and their families. The success of the Heart Heroes program caught the attention of the Children's Hospital Association, who invited Emma to speak at their national conference. At just 10 years old, Emma would be addressing an audience of pediatric healthcare professionals from around the world. "Mommy, what if I get scared?" Emma asked as they prepared for the trip to the conference. "My name is Emma Martinez, and 2 years ago, I was dying," she began. "My heart was broken, and I couldn't run or play or even climb stairs without getting tired. I was scared, and my mom was scared, and we didn't know if I would ever get better." But she also talked about something deeper: the importance of seeing sick children not just as patients, but as whole people with dreams and hopes and the potential to change the world. And if you save that kid, you're not just saving one life. You're saving all the lives that kid is going to touch, all the people they're going to help, all the good they're going to do in the world. Rodriguez, who had been in the audience, told Sarah, "I've been to hundreds of medical conferences, and I've never heard anything as powerful as what Emma said today. She's going to change the world." The World Health Organization invited Emma and Sarah to participate in a global initiative to improve pediatric cardiac care in developing countries. The Emma Martinez device was being used to establish cardiac surgery programs in hospitals that had never been able to offer these life-saving procedures. Their first international mission took them to Guatemala, where a new pediatric cardiac center was being established using equipment donated by David's foundation. Emma, now 11, served as an ambassador for the program, meeting with local children and families and sharing her story through translators. 7-year-old Sophia had the same condition Emma had once had, but her family lived in a remote village and had never had access to specialized medical care. Thanks to the new cardiac center and the Emma Martinez device, Sophia was able to receive the surgery she needed. Emma was there when Sophia woke up from surgery, holding her hand and showing her the scar they now shared. Despite the language barrier, the two girls connected immediately, both understanding what it meant to have a fixed heart. "Corazón fuerte," Emma whispered to Sophia, one of the Spanish phrases she had learned. "Strong heart." Each new cardiac center saved dozens of children's lives and provided hope to families who had previously had no options. A year after Emma's surgery, David's company developed the Emma Martinez Pediatric Cardiac Stabilizer, and it was officially unveiled at a press conference that would change everything once again. The device was named in honor of the little girl whose story had inspired its development, and proceeds from its sales would fund free surgeries for children whose families couldn't afford them. At the device's unveiling, Emma, now 12 years old and bursting with health and confidence, stood beside David as he announced the revolutionary impact the device would have on pediatric cardiac care worldwide. "Every child deserves the chance to live a full, healthy life," David said to the assembled crowd of medical professionals and journalists. Emma Martinez reminded me of that, and her mother Sarah showed me what it means to truly help another person. It's the chance for parents to stop being scared and start believing in tomorrow. She appeared on morning talk shows, was featured in major magazines, and became the youngest person ever to address the United Nations General Assembly about children's health rights. Carlos Santos, the little boy Emma had befriended during her own hospital stay, was now healthy and thriving. His mother Maria had learned English and become a patient advocate at their local hospital in Mexico, helping other Spanish-speaking families navigate the medical system. Carlos, now 8 years old, had organized a surprise video call with children from around the world who had been helped by the Emma Martinez device. One by one, healthy, happy children appeared on screen, each holding a picture they had drawn of a heart and sharing how the device had saved their lives. By Emma's 13th birthday, they had helped over 5,000 families and funded hundreds of surgeries. The Emma Martinez device was being used in hospitals on 6 continents, and the Heart Heroes program had chapters in over 200 schools across 20 countries. But perhaps the most significant development came when Emma was accepted into a prestigious summer program at Johns Hopkins Medical School for exceptional young students interested in medicine. At 13, she was the youngest student ever admitted to the program. "I want to learn everything I can," Emma told the program director during her interview. "I want to understand not just how to fix hearts, but how to fix the systems that keep kids from getting the help they need." She also presented her research on the psychological impact of peer support programs on young cardiac patients, work that would later be published in a major medical journal. Sarah Chen, a pediatric cardiologist who had been inspired to enter medicine after reading about Emma's story in a medical journal. Dr. Chen had grown up in poverty and had almost lost her own mother to heart disease when she was young. "Reading about you and your mother showed me that ordinary people can do extraordinary things," Dr. Chen told Emma. "It made me believe that I could become a doctor and help other families like mine." Chen had since performed over 1,000 pediatric cardiac procedures and had established a free clinic in her hometown to serve low-income families. Her story was yet another example of how Emma's experience had rippled outward to touch lives in ways they could never have imagined. The summer program also gave Emma the opportunity to work with Dr. Rodriguez on research into new surgical techniques. Together, they were developing a minimally invasive procedure that could be performed using the Emma Martinez device, making cardiac surgery even safer and more accessible for young children. Emma has an intuitive understanding of the patient experience that most medical professionals take years to develop, Dr. Rodriguez observed. She sees not just the medical problem, but the whole child and family. That perspective is invaluable in developing truly patient-centered care. She had also been invited to serve on the board of directors for the Chen Medical Foundation, making her the youngest board member in the organization's history. But Emma remained grounded and focused on the work that mattered most to her, helping other children and families facing medical crises. She continued to write letters to young patients, visited hospitals whenever possible, and worked with Sarah to develop new programs for the foundation. As they walked out of the hospital together, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. A routine flight, a medical emergency, a split-second decision to help a stranger. These small moments had created a chain of events that saved not just David's life, but transformed Emma's future and touched countless other families. She thought about all the times she had questioned whether her kindness mattered in a world that often seemed indifferent to suffering. The answer was walking beside her, healthy and strong, planning her future as a doctor who would help other children. Sometimes the most ordinary moments contain the seeds of extraordinary change. Sometimes helping a stranger on an airplane can save your own child's life. And sometimes the universe aligns in ways that remind us that kindness is never wasted, compassion is never meaningless, and love has the power to create miracles. They had saved each other, and in doing so, they had created something beautiful. A foundation that would help thousands of children. A friendship that would last a lifetime, and a reminder that in our darkest moments, angels really do walk among us. 3 years later, Emma was in 8th grade and volunteering at the Children's Hospital every weekend. She had decided to specialize in pediatric cardiology, following in Dr. Rodriguez's footsteps. Her science grades were exceptional, and she had already been accepted into a summer program for young people interested in medicine. The foundation had grown to help over 5,000 families, with the Emma Martinez Pediatric Cardiac Stabilizer being used in hospitals around the world. Rodriguez and her family gathered for their annual celebration dinner. It had become a tradition, a way to mark not just Emma's recovery, but the web of relationships and positive change that had grown from that chance encounter on an airplane. "I have an announcement," Jennifer said during dessert. She had just finished her residency and was about to start her fellowship in pediatric cardiology. "I've been accepted to work with Dr. Rodriguez, and I'll be specializing in the same procedure that saved Emma's life. And I want you to know that every child I help, I'll be thinking about that conversation we had when you were 8 years old, about how you wanted to help other children." To Emma, who showed us that hope and courage can overcome any obstacle. And to all the families we've been able to help because of what started on Flight 447. The financial struggles, the fear, the uncertainty, all of it had led to this moment, to this family they had created, to the thousands of children who would benefit from their foundation. She spoke at foundation events, sharing her story and encouraging other families facing similar challenges. She had started a peer support group for children with heart conditions, and her room was filled with letters from kids around the world who had been helped by the foundation. "Mom," Emma said as they drove home from the dinner, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't helped Mr. David that day? What is that you're healthy and happy and helping other people. What is that we've been able to help thousands of families. What is that we've learned that one act of kindness can change the world." In just a few years, she would be starting college, beginning her journey toward medical school, working toward her dream of becoming a pediatric cardiologist. The little girl who had once been too weak to climb stairs was now planning to save lives. As they pulled into their driveway, Sarah thought about the letter that had arrived that morning from a mother in Oregon whose son had just received his third surgery using the Emma Martinez device. The letter thanked them for giving her boy the chance to live a normal life, to play sports, to dream about his future. Families in desperate situations who had found hope through the foundation, children who were now healthy because of medical advances inspired by Emma's story, parents who no longer had to choose between bankruptcy and their child's health. "Mommy," Emma said as they walked toward their front door, "I know exactly what I want to put on my medical school application when the time comes. That when we help each other, we create miracles." Next to it was a picture from her 13th birthday party, surrounded by friends she had made through the foundation, other children who had overcome medical challenges and were now thriving. Sarah stood in the doorway watching her daughter work, marveling at how a single moment of compassion had rippled outward to touch so many lives. Tomorrow, Emma would volunteer at the hospital. Next week, she would speak at a medical conference about the patient experience. Next month, she would travel with Sarah to visit families who had been helped by the foundation. And someday, she would stand in an operating room holding the heart of a frightened child, using skills she had learned and equipment that existed because her mother had chosen to help a stranger on an airplane. The circle would be complete, but the ripples would continue spreading outward, touching lives not yet born, creating hope in places not yet imagined. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest changes in the world. Sometimes helping a stranger becomes the most important thing you'll ever do. And sometimes, the angel you think you're being turns out to be the angel you needed all along.